Gosia said, this is my third SOAP conference. My name is Rafał Pawlicki and I work for DreamLab. And because this is my third SOAP conference, I want to share some thoughts with the new SOAPers. Are there any in the room right now? The first timers? Okay, so there are plenty of you. So I was wondering, why do I like this conference so much? And I realized that each year SOAP conference is a little bit different, and each year SOAP is a little bit different. And it's difficult to explain, and it's really hard to explain, but let me show you what I mean. Each year, SOAP are different. They've got different colors, different shapes, sizes, but seriously, each year I'm learning something new from this conference. And this year we are talking about Docs as code, and I have to say that we did it. Thank you. No. Of course, some of you may ask, okay, so what? We also have implemented Docs as code in our company. But our case was a little bit unusual. First of all, I worked for DreamLab for over 6 years. I was working as a developer, providing IT solutions for the publishing industry. And we work for one of the biggest publishers in Europe. So we've got a lot of brands, over 100 brands, and over 2,000 running applications behind them. So it's a lot of software. And at the same time, we did not have good, reliable documentation for this software. Something that we also did not have was a technical writer. So this is why I decided to become a documentation manager. And now we've got me. But anyway, let me tell you a story about how we change our tools, our environment, but also our mindset of our people to implement Docs as code in our company. First of all, the setup, when I started, the setup was pretty easy. So I've got over 70,000 documents mixed up, written in Confluence, created without any rules, and by over 300 developers that were not familiar how to write for human. Anyway, let's assume that we've got a problem in here. And let's talk about assumptions. We are all making assumptions simply because sometimes we don't have time or opportunity to check everything carefully, but sometimes because we are using assumptions as shortcuts. For example, how many of you thought that I've got everything in my notes just because I'm staring over and over again at these blank pieces of paper? So, the first assumption that we made was that if we will be able to provide some simple tool, some simple solution, then even developer would start to write. And we thought that this can be simple, so we designed a process that tells us that you need to follow only these 3 steps to provide some documentation. How simple was that? Only 3 steps. But unfortunately, it wasn't simple at all, because each of these steps had some hidden task behind it. So developers had to install some software, set environment, remember some complicated command line phrases, and it was too much. But we were headstrong, and we simplified this process by simplifying our tools. So let's take a look how it looks like. So first of all, you can initialize your documentation and build your documentation into static HTML files. And it was even simpler because we integrated with our developers' tools. So at the end of the day, they can use docrun command to detect all the changes in the source files and instantly build them to a static documentation. So whenever developers change something in the source files, he will know how documentation will look like in his browser, how awesome it was, and how simple it was. And if we assume that if this is so simple, they will understand. And I'm not talking only about the tool, only about the environment, but about the idea in general. And first of all, if you are changing something meaningfully, you need to have an answer for each and every question. And we thought that we had. After a few meetings, after a few workshops with our developers, we thought that we assumed that they understood. But they didn't. Why? First of all, they start to complain again about the same issues. So I remember one of my colleagues from my previous developer's life who had some problems with importing insight provided by his product owner into restructured text format. But they were also complaining about the idea itself because they were pointing that we don't need another tool or that the Confluence was better. And why? Why they can say something like that? First of all, we were not precise enough. So we made some kind of assumptions, and the context was different because we started to think like you, like writers, but they weren't. So at the end of the day, we start to use because we say so argument. And we try to prove them that we know best how it should be done. But as you probably know, it doesn't work that way, even if you're right. So some very smart guy said once, you can never solve a problem on the level on which it was created. So we went deeper. We arranged some dedicated workshops with our teams, with each and every team. And this was an opportunity for us to get a real feedback, analyze specific use cases, and also their needs. But it was also a place and opportunity to list all missing features and some ideas for the new ones. It was also a great insight to finishing or updating our documentation standard and style guide. So at the end of the day, we can answer for all of their questions by simply saying, read the fabulous manual. How cool was that? But even if we can answer for all of their questions, and even if we've got some plans in our head, we did not have everything deployed yet. And we decided to start using Docs as code anyway. How did it go? It was a nightmare. Developers were complaining. The writing process took more time and effort than we expected. And I remember one of my friends that claiming that their documentation cannot be converted in restructured text format because they are using diagrams. And I checked them out. There were only 2 of them, not edited since 2013. So I made the static version of them, and the problem was solved. But they were also claiming that tables are hard to arrange, hard to create in plain text languages or some markup languages. And if you look closely, these tables are complicated, but you need to also remember that tables were created for tabular data, not for code snippets, images, or long paragraphs. Anyway, our developers were sad, and they were not happy. And when your developers are not happy, you need to act fast. First of all, we taught them how to use the content and especially how don't use some kind of macros or plugins that they loved in Confluence. We also developed some missing features by the hands of our developers who were already engaged and who wants to improve our tools, improve our environment. So this was very important that we already have some engaged people. We also defined a publishing process. So from now on, we know how, when, and where we want to publish our documentation. So it was pretty obvious also for them. And we start to write docs as code anyway, because docs as code is not a tool, it's not a process or environment. It's an idea of storing and managing your documentation. So the idea that was already sold at that time, so we were still on the right tracks. Okay, but when we nailed all of developers' needs, we noticed that it's working. It's actually alive, and we were so proud of them because our developers grew up and started to write documentation. But suddenly they stopped, and we asked ourselves, why? What if there's more than a few books to be written? What if they won't be updating their books? And how can we actually know if these books have a good quality? So the question was how to improve our process. And first of all, we improve our tools, our environment, and we integrate documentation tools with our continuous integration tools. So at the end of the day, developer not only can see how documentation will look like, but he will also know that there were no errors during the build or publish phases. So we also integrated with our, as I said, continuous integration environment, so you can now review docs as code by simply creating a pull request that can be sent to your colleague, to your friend, who can check your changes and finally approve them. And when we've got an approve, we can actually click a merge button, and I won't touch anything because the magic happens under the hood. So automatically built and deployed processes are triggered, and at this point you can also use some additional tools like language tool for example, language tool which can help you to set some quality gates for your documentation. It can check your grammar, your syntax, but also, which is pretty much cool, your custom rules. Anyway, after all this, we've got documentation that was checked by a human, was checked by some automated mechanisms, and also was built and deployed into the right spot. So next thing was to listen to to collect feedback from our readers. And we've got managers, we've got help desk that is working directly with our clients. So we use the insight provided by them to fill the gaps, to find the places that are not covered by our documentation. So if you've got that kind of process that allows you to provide good quality documentation, and you can forget about the past, right? But not really, because we still have dozens documents in Confluence. So we decided to heal the world and make it a better place without the Confluence. And the first thing was to migrate some first part of documentation into restructured text format. And at this point, you can use some tools like Pandoc, for example, which allows you to convert Confluence documents into restructured text format or Markdown, whatever. Finally, we also did not think about the future of our not about our documentation, but rather about future of our products and our company. Because when we were in the middle of healing the world, the huge project was launched. And we started to sell Ring Publishing, our all-in-one solution for online publishers. And why this was important? Because new clients arrived, and our strategy changed, and this was a huge change for us, because until then, we've got only internal clients in here in Poland, but suddenly, huge part of our documentation and huge part of our products became available publicly for the clients from 11 different countries. So we've got a huge to-do list, and private and not completed documentation was one of them. So how to provide docs fast? First of all, we use our standard and style guide also to unify documentation between products, and also to make it, to rebrand it, that it can fit to our marketing strategy. We also prepare environment, so now we are able to publish our documentation in the many different spots, especially a public spot. And when everything was ready, we simply start to write the docs. And DreamLab is known as a company that have a lot of engaged people. And we need their focus because we did not have time. And when I say people, I think about managers, I think about developers, and I also think about product owners, because they all started to write documentation. And to appreciate that, we decided to put their faces into the cover of our documentation magazine, so they can be appreciated somehow, and to promote documentation in our company. Okay, but documentation is not ready, and it won't be, because documentation is a continuous process. So, in which you should learn from the past and migrate something from the past, constantly improved, but also think about the future. And Doxa's code is a great idea, as we heard today from the previous soaps, from the previous talks, but idea that need to be bulletproof. And idea that need to be supported by your tool, by your environment, and also, which is the most important in my opinion, by your people. Was it worth it to use Doxa's code in our company? We are at the point when we are creating one unified process that allows us to document our work, and also can be automated, and it can help us to provide and check and improve the quality of this documentation. So it can take some time and some effort to get there, but I think it's definitely worth it. And if you're notice right now, if you are thinking right now that, okay, I'm better than this, I can predict all these things, and I will detect every little detail, let me ask you a question. Did you notice that during this talk, I start to look like a real soaper? Yes. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Rafał, I lost my microphone.
It happens.
Yeah, many things happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, so you have questions? Questions, okay. 3 questions, 4 questions, and that's it. Okay, let's start here.
Okay, I have a question. How have you managed to change your T-shirt without many people not noticing that? From a black one with DreamLab to this one.
It's my sweet little
Magic?
secret. Yeah, maybe it's a magic. I'm new in this industry as a documentation manager, and I have some new powers, so maybe this is one of them.
Thank you.
Sorry that I cannot answer to your question.
Maybe after he has a beer or two.
Maybe.
Hi, Rafał. Magic trick was really superb. Now, 2 questions. Last year, you were a developer.
Yes.
This year, you're a documentation manager. Do you believe your approach to the documentation has changed?
Not really, because last year I also was talking about Doxa's code. So
Yeah.
the approach is the same, but now as I said, I've got more power to change something in our company, and also I've got a huge background as a developer, so I can do some things like gym, I think. So I can provide some tools, and I understand developers who had some problems and who have some problems today. And this is why I think that this is a good approach, Doxa's code.
Mm-hmm. And by curiosity, have you already hired a tech writer, or are you still a bunch of devs hating writing humans but writing human text?
It's a tough question because it's dangerous.
Okay,
but
I can cancel my question if you wish to.
We still don't have any technical writer, but we are thinking about some help from technical writer, and we we got some one-time tasks for technical writers. So, for example, when we run our products, we hire a writer who can write some business marketing content to promote this product. So, long story short, no, we don't have any technical writer still, but we've got a lot of high engaged people, and developers ask about documentation constantly, and they are coming to me and ask how they should document things and their products, especially those who we are about to sell. So I don't think that we don't need a technical writer. We've got our company is built in a different way, and our products, we've got plenty products. So we can hire a dozen technical writers, but still they won't help us if we will need to have documentation right away, because we should onboard them somehow, and it will take time. So.
Thank you.
Yes, a question here. Yep.
How do you deal with content quality? Do you have any editors, proofreaders?
Not really. As I said, we are testing some tools that can help us to provide some better quality, and I'm thinking about automation, because we've got a lot of products, and checking documentation for them would be a huge job. Once again, even if we hire a dozen writers or quality checkers, they won't help in this point of time, because we need to act fast, as I said also. So we don't have time to hire new people, train them what our products are and how they should be described. So we are heading to a place when we've got an environment that is integrated, and in our case that means that it's a real Doxas code. So you've got also quality checks during the documentation, the development of your documentation. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we have one more question right there. Yep.
Hi, I have a question. In your presentation, you mentioned some sort of a command that generated the content locally on the developer's machine.
Yes.
I was wondering if that was just a metaphor, if it was as easy to use as just running a simple doc build command and then seeing the results in your browser.
Okay.
If the devs are still using it, and what part of the documentation is generated? Is it the entire documentation portal with the changes, or is it just a chunk of the documentation that was edited? This is a really intriguing idea.
First of all, this was a pretty version of the live demo, because you can do the same thing from your command line tools. And so we've got something that we called doc CLI, command line interface. So you can use those commands for real. The second one, which part of documentation is built by this tool? We are about to decide that if we want to put all of our documentation in there, also our non-technical user documentation, and it can be a good idea, because our product owners don't really have time to write a full documentation of their products. Maybe only the marketing part of it, but developers in our company are familiar with the business cases and some user stories that they support by their software. So they are the right person, in our opinion, to write some user manual as well. I don't know if I answered you.
We can chat.
Okay.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Rafał.
Thank you.